Welcome. So tonight we're going to talk about materialism. So we're going to go through the definitions, the dangers of materialism. Is it too small? No. We're going to talk a little bit also about the law of preservation and why do we fall prey to materialism. Also, we're going to talk about needs versus wants, what I want and what I need. There's a huge difference. Making comparisons, how we make comparisons, and because of that, we're very unhappy. We're also going to talk about how materialism, spiritualism, and spiritism relate to each other. And then we'll talk about reason, faith. What is reason, faith? And then the considerations at the end. And if you have any questions, it's better to ask at the end. That's okay with everybody. As you don't understand some word, then it's okay, I think, to ask, right? Okay, let's talk about some definitions of materialism. So it's this preoccupation or emphasis we give to material objects, to comforts of life and considerations, but with a disinterest in spiritual, intellectual, or cultural values. Also, interest in and desire for money, possessions, rather than the spiritual values or ethical values. It's also considered the rejection of any religious or supernatural account of things. So in materialism, everything is kind of random. There's no God, no as a cause of things, and usually we are self-sufficient. People who think this way, we think we're self-sufficient. In Spiritism, in the Spirit's book, we find that one of the main principles of materialism is the belief in this absolute annihilation, meaning the destruction of the soul, or our destruction. If we die, then there's nothing else. And most so-called materialists, they come to this conviction because they cannot find a rational grounds for belief in a future life, so they just deny it. But isn't that a really scary idea? To think there's nothing else when we die? It's kind of scary. They also believe everything can be reduced to mere matter, and that death is the destruction of all thoughts. So all our mind is destructed when we die. Sometimes it can be out of fear, out of pride. People deny this future life. Maybe they don't understand, or they don't know how to explain, or science doesn't explain very well, so then I deny it exists. Also, as if we were so evolved to be able to explain everything right now, right? We're not yet. But most humans intuitively believe that we don't end with the death of the body. So we have that thing inside us that tells us maybe there's more. Is there? We have that question. And we usually get horrified with the idea that we're going to end. So we see those two things. So let's talk about the dangers of materialism. And we have Madonna here saying that, but we live in a material world, right? And we're a material girl or boy. So we do live in a material world, and we get very distracted with it. That's because we call it danger. We get distracted with things and we don't think of the things that really matter in our lives. And this is just, it's not for us to be like, oh, worried. It's just to think about. Let's go through the dangers and see how we're doing. Let's see, the first one, consumerism. You see this picture here? People buying a lot of, she cannot carry all the bags, right? So what is consumerism? And in Portuguese, I put some of the translations, what is in Portuguese. So the belief that it's good for people to spend a lot of money on goods and services. So this belief is consumerism. Also actions of people who spend a lot of money on goods and services. So here we have a picture of a shopaholic. So we have this term, right, in English, shopaholic. So sometimes we shop because we're sad. We shop because we have problems. It's an attempt to compensate our frustrations with gifts, with presents. So we give ourselves something good because maybe there is something else not very good going on. So we want to compensate. Sometimes we want to compensate our children because maybe we're not there all the time. We travel, we have to work. So we buy them expensive gifts, expensive toys, clothing. Is that what they really need? Is it? So in the end of the day, we acquire more problems, like credit card debt, and sometimes we have that cluttered garage at home. You cannot even park your car there because there's so many things, right? And there is a movie on YouTube called Human, and it has a lot of testimonials. And one of the testimonials is the former president of Uruguay, José Mujica, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he says that we invented this mountain of superfluous needs, things we don't need, and we have to keep buying, and then we throw away. We buy, we throw away. And when we buy something, what we're really doing is we're paying not just with the money, because how did we get the money? We pay with the time we spend in our lives to earn the money. So we spend a lot of time earning the money, then we have the money, now we spend a lot. So we're spending really our lives away. So, but the difference is that you cannot buy life whenever your time is over. You cannot buy more. So what are we doing with our times now and with our money? And also continue talking about consumerism, the misuse of wealth, the misuse of the money we have. So our life does not consist in the abundance of our possessions. We're much more than that. We're more than what we have. So the wealth itself is not a problem. The problem is ourselves, because we misuse things we have. We misuse the gifts of God, like the resources in the nature, like water, plants, the air, oxygen. So we don't use it very well, and then you say, oh, there's not enough water, there's not enough, good air to breathe. Is it that there's not enough, or we don't know how to use it? We use more than we should, or we misuse. And by misuse, we constantly turn things that could help us into things that actually harm us, which is really a sorry consequence of our still undeveloped states. And this is in the Gospel, in the chapter 16, where it talks about misuse of wealth and resources. So another danger of materialism, this, I think you used this somewhere, it's like strong. So vices, excesses, and bad habits. So food, we have eating disorders, so anorexia, bulimia, now we have all kinds of disorders, overeating. Why are we doing this? To compensate our frustrations, because we want maybe to be loved and accepted by others, so we need to look a certain way, we need to be a certain weight, and then we go into the scale in the morning and Is that really what matters? How are we evaluating our lives? So we want to be loved, accepted, we want to be popular, so now there's a lot of people with anorexia and bulimia, so that's very sad. Also there is, sex, when people have this as a vice, so it's not something natural, it's not good. Alcohol, drugs, gambling, slander also, and we had a talk about slander. It's also a bad habit. Also, all negative feelings we carry during the day, anger, revenge, things that are not good for us. And we're thinking all the time. That's also a form of vice or excesses. And there is an article talks about health, and this guy is talking there should be a new disorder, a new eating disorder, which is we're now obsessed with eating something that's delicious 3 times a day. It needs to be delicious, it needs to look nice. If you look at the ads on the TV, when they talk about food, it's always so nice. They have great names, actually, for all the dishes. And there is this idea that we always have to eat something that's really delicious. So it's becoming a disorder now. And we have to do it, in all our meals. So it's like it has become our birthright. That's what he says in the article. And food needs to be incredibly delicious. But then what is in that food? A lot of refined sugar sometimes, added salt, a lot of salt, fat, oil, or sometimes chemicals, a lot of processed food, which is not really good for us. But we're eating anything that tastes good and makes us feel instantly gratified. And then we know now that our thyroids are failing, and then people are becoming diabetic, obese, developing heart disease, suffering migraines, and so on. And then we blame God. Why God did that to me, right? So we become slaves of our own desires. Law of preservation. This is in the Spirit's book. So it's good that this law exists. So it means we have a mission here on earth, and we need to preserve our lives. We need to live the full time we have here. So it's good that God put in us this instinct of preservation, so we don't die before we should die, right? But then we start to overcompensate. So we want to live extravagantly, over-consuming. We ignore the law, and that's an abuse of the law. So, but we will be held accountable for the hardship it may cause to others. Everything that is in excess to a person might be taken away from others. Human beings are insatiable. Now, our vices change our constitution and create artificial needs for us. So I think they explained this in one of the books, that when we have a vice, we're actually changing our body, the way our body, behaves and functions, and it actually creates a need, but it's an artificial need, and we carry it with us, sometimes even after we die, because it's impregnated in this perispirit. So we all may have vices. Now it's the time to work on them. That's why we're here. Right? And we carry this energetic luggage of vices, like I was saying. And the perispirit, if someone might not know here, is the semi-material envelope of our spirit. So we have our spirits, our perispirits, and then our physical body. When the physical body dies, we carry on with our perispirit and spirit. But having money, having comfort, it's okay. Nobody's saying, it's something bad. But everything is relative. And common sense must be placed I must place everything in its proper order. We have always to be careful with the misuse of the things we have available to us. Our power, our strength, our talents, we will always be held accountable. The more we know, the more we have, the more responsible we should be. This is kind of strong, but let's breathe. Let's go to this. So let's see, it's out in the Spirit's book. So people who engage in abuse of drugs, sex, food, and so on, in order to maximize pleasure, for pleasure's sake, meaning there's no other reason, place themselves below the animal level. Since even animals know to observe the limits in satisfying their needs. So even in nature, the animals, I guess by instinct, they know, when enough is enough. But do we know when enough is enough? And this is in a section that is called Enjoying the Fruits of the Earth in the Spirit's book. And we know that the results of these abuses can be diseases, can be decadence of ourselves, and finally, and maybe an early death. And in the book or the movie Nosolar or Astral City, I think that's the name in English, it describes André Luiz, the main character, and he dies earlier, I guess, than he should have died. And people tell him, but you committed suicide. And he says, I didn't. He didn't commit suicide, but they call, I think, passive suicide or chronic suicide, meaning every day you do something that's not good for you. Every day. And then you die earlier than you should have died. So that's what is called passive suicide. Or unconscious. We don't want to do it, but we end up doing without realizing. So common sense is always the key. So other dangers, immediacy and hedonism. What are all these big words? Let's see. Immediacy, the quality that makes something seem important or interesting because it is or seems to be happening now. So it needs to happen now. If it's happening now, it's good. And it's because we always want immediate satisfaction. We want to buy something and have it now. Especially here in the US, I think things are so easy. If you have a credit card, you're buying, right? And we have no patience anymore. We cannot wait. If we wait in line, it's like, oh my gosh, how come? We don't like the place anymore, we don't go there, we tell people don't go there because there was a big line. And this causes a lot of stress and frustration. We get like all anger. So that's not good, right? And hedonism. So living and behaving in ways that mean you get as much pleasure out of life as possible, according to the belief that the most important thing in life is enjoying yourself. Is it? So this picture I found online that there is this concept of hedonic treadmill, where you are always running after the pleasures of life. You're trying to catch the pleasures of life. However, we don't get happier. We are always just in the pursuit of happiness, but we're not getting anything, you see. And there is a study that it shows that people who make $70,000 a year or more, they have the same levels of happiness. So after this threshold that they found out, $70,000 a year, happiness doesn't increase with the increase of income. So you make more, but your happiness is the same. There's no change. But then sometimes you're working to earn more. And we think we're going to be happier and much more fulfilled, but we won't. So it's just a misperception on our side. So attachments, also another danger of materialism. What is attachment? It can be, we can be attached to something or someone in particular, something like things we like, our car, our houses, someone. We can be attached to a relationship, but in a bad way, meaning if you're too attached to someone and that person dies, you feel like you're gonna die, you're gonna, take your life. So when it's at that level, then it's not good anymore. So that's when we call attachment. But we can also be attached to the past or to the future. So when we're attached to the past, we can feel depression. Or when we are too attached to the future, it causes anxiety in us. So let's take a step back and think, am I living in the past? Am I living in the future? Where should we live? Now. We should try to live now, here. So we become slaves of our possessions. We have to work more and more to maintain the big house, the expensive car, the collection of shoes and handbags, of course. And are we slaves of our possessions? In this, I was looking for some quotes, and I saw this one from Fight Club. It's a movie, right? And the main character, Tyler Durden, he's the character of Brad Pitt. And he said, the things you own end up owning you. And look what this money is telling us. I am a piece of paper, and I control your entire life. Hopefully, that's not true. Let's see who else agrees on these attachments. So in Buddhism, we know that they say that attachment and pride are the major sources of suffering. In Spiritism, they also say that pride and selfishness, yes, are the sources of suffering. And Hinduism also talks about attachment, but it's more the attachment to the results, not to everything else in life. So in Hinduism, one who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action, as the lotus is untouched by water. So it's the detachment towards the results of one's action. So it's a little bit different. And then Confucius, a Chinese person that lived 500 years before Christ. So at that time, he already knew this, right? So a truly rich man is not a man with many possessions, money, or treasures, but a man who needs little to be happy. So the less we need to be happy, the happier we are, because it's easier to have less, right? And so Buddha, Krishna, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, we know those were all messengers from Christ, or messengers from God. And they came to earth to help us, or help Christ to spread the word among different cultures, different countries. So it's also good to compare sometimes to see what other religions are saying, because the core is the same, right? Let's see here. And also there is another say that talks about having the minimum with God is the same as having everything. And having everything, but without God, is the same as having nothing. So when we're not in harmony with God's laws, meaning when we're not with God, we suffer. So we can have everything, but we can feel lonely, we can feel depressed, or we can feel unfulfilled or unhappy. So what's the point of having much without God? Another danger, suicide. So unbelief, skepticism about future life, and all sentiments that are born of materialistic beliefs contribute to suicide. And this spread of this doctrine that doesn't believe there's something else is a toxin that poisons the minds of a large number of people who entertain suicidal ideas. So is killing ourselves the best alternative to our misfortunes? All right. So unfortunately, we know that's an illusion to think like that. Because when we kill ourselves, we're just killing really the material body. The spirit goes on, carries on. And imagine that if you were in such a desperation, you kill yourself, you die, you go to the other side, you didn't really die, you look at yourself, but I'm still here. Imagine the frustration and that this spirit will find. And the problems will be there, they're not going to go away. So we know in Spiritism, we learn also through testimonials. We have books like Heaven and Hell, where the spirits, through some mediumistic sessions, they tell us what they did when they were on Earth and what happened when they went to the other side, when their material body died. So they describe people who committed suicide, they describe how they are on the other side. They say it's not easy, especially in the beginning. They thought everything was going to be gone and they would be, I don't know, happy, or at least they wouldn't exist anymore and all the problems would be solved. But then they come us and tell us that's not really what happens. So in that way, we know for a fact that that's not the answer, right? But why? Why? So why do we fall prey to materialism? There is a saying, the flesh is weak, but is it really the flesh that is weak? So Allan Kardec says in this book, Heaven and Hell, the flesh is weak because the spirit is weak. So we're still imperfect spirits. We're learning through material experiences. We're learning, we're imperfect. That's why. But sometimes we are also numb. We are on autopilot. We believe maybe sometimes death is the end. If we're going maybe through something really bad in life, some bad situation, maybe we think, oh, maybe I'll just, end my life. Sometimes we're too attached to the matter because that's what we see. We have to work, we have to buy food, we have to eat. That's why. But we get confused. We have to do all these things, but those are not the most important things in life. So we want to be rich, we want to be famous, successful, we want beauty, youth, as if that was all that matters. It's always nice to have those things, but that's not all that matters. And also we want to fix sometimes problems that are really spiritual, but we want to fix with material solutions. So we want to feel that void, that emptiness in our hearts. We have questions, but we want to feel with material things. That's not going to work, right? Doesn't make sense. So we have these questions. What's the meaning of my life? What am I doing here? If we don't know the answers, if we have no idea, we start looking for those things somewhere else. We start looking, that's why we develop vices, because if I don't know what to do with myself, it doesn't matter, I'll just drink until I sleep, until I go to sleep. I don't want to think too much about my real problems. So maybe I'll just go eat something that's really delicious. So then maybe I'll forget for a minute my problems. Or I don't want to really think about my mother-in-law or my husband or my children. So maybe I'll go to bingo, go gamble. So, and also, so we end up creating more problems, right? So vices, diseases, bad habits, a lot of drama, and that. So it becomes a snowball. It's one thing after the other. It gets worse and worse. Also, faith based on material things will never last, because material things come and go. Our jobs, money, cars, relationships, our health. So let's say if we lose our jobs, or if our car is stolen, or if we get sick, then we start to question God. So what kind of faith is this? So our faith is more material than spiritual. So it's like the house built on sand. When the tide comes, the house is gone, because the foundations are not solid. So our foundation should not be, again, on material things. Also, we are all living different realities on earth. Each one of us has a different background. And in one of the videos, I was watching a lot of talks on YouTube, a lot of Spiritist talks. And this one, it was about financial crisis and materialism. And this guy, Nazareno Feitosa, so he tells us that financial crisis is like we're living in an intense care unit, ICU. So we're going through a healing process that's happening to us, happening to a certain place, area. It's part of a healing process we're going through. And then he says that every opportunity we have here on earth, or every situations we go through, are opportunities. So we're all here for a reason. So maybe we are in a hospital, maybe going through a financial crisis, or we're in treatment. Maybe we're in an asylum, meaning we are unaware of what's going on. We are unaware of our spiritual life. Or are we feeling like we're living in a prison? Are we feeling strange in this material body? Are we feeling incarcerated? Or are we in school? Are we learning new things? Going through different grades in school? Or is it a temple? How are our feelings? Are we hopeful? Are we faithful? Are we peaceful? So we're all here, but we can be living different situations in our minds, right? And with the transition of our planets from a world of expiation and trials into a world of regeneration, we know that we're going to undergo a lot of changes. And those crises, those things, situations are part of the changes. And we as spirits, we have the chance to incarnate on earth and expiate our debts. And that's why we're here, and that's why sometimes not everything is so nice as we would like it to be. We're being given another chance. So that's why the 911. So it's like our last call, not last, but it's a big chance we're having right now. It's our wake-up call, let's say like that. So let's take this opportunity and make it the best of it. Needs versus wants. What I want, what I need. So fear sometimes causes selfishness and the desire to accumulate. And in that same talk, the guy was saying sometimes we bring fear from our past lives. Let's say if maybe we're really poor in another life, or we had different conditions, and now we carry that fear that maybe we'll be poor again or we'll be homeless. So sometimes it's also fears that are unconscious. We don't even know about it, but then we start to accumulate. So more than we need, really. And we forget to trust in the divine providence that says, ask and you shall receive. But we want to accumulate a lot just in case. And then that reminds us, there's the story of the child and 3 wishes. So look at this child here. Imagine if we were to ask the child to think about 3 wishes. If we were to grant her 3 wishes, what would the child say? What does the child want? Maybe she wants to eat all candy, or candy for all meals. No more dinner, no more lunch, just candy, chocolate. Or maybe that's one wish. The other wish, I don't want to take more showers. No showers. Shower is boring. I want to be doing something else. I want to play. And the third wish, maybe she doesn't want to go to school anymore. No school. I want to play with my friends and just sleep in. So as parents, we know those are not good wishes, are not good things to do, even though the child wants to do it. In the long run, we know that's not good. So should we grant those wishes to the child? Should we? We know better, right? We know. So the same thing happens to us and God. So even though we ask for all the things we want, and usually we really are asking for the things we want, not the things we need, and then we don't get them, then we blame God, we are rebellious, and we feel like we're not heard, there's no one watching over us. So the same thing is God with us. God knows not to grant something if it's not for our own good. But He will always, always, always grant us things that we need. He knows what's best for our evolution. So what should we ask then when we pray? Please, please, please. Wow. So we learned that in the Gospel, according to Spiritism, in I think the last chapter, there is a whole chapter just talking about on how to pray for different situations. So how should we pray? Should we ask for material things, for a car, purse, things like that? So we learned that we should ask for strength, resignation, to go through difficult situations, for example, or courage and determination to do what needs to be done, or maybe guidance and inspiration so we can make better choices in life. So to pray really is to use of our free will to give the superior spirits or gods permission to help us. So we're saying, I have this problem, I'm going through this situation, help me. So we are giving permission to be helped. And that's our free will, because God always knows what we need. But sometimes we don't want to know, we don't want to have anything to do with God. We're like going with our lives, autopilots. We're not connected with God. God is there, sitting there, waiting for us. And we don't want anything to do with God. So God's not going to force, if He was a person, of course it's not, but if we were to imagine, we have the free will for a reason, because we can decide when we are ready to be helped. So it's a little bit different, it's a different concept. But I like to think this way, for me it makes sense. So when we're praying really like that, praying really, so we're asking God or Jesus or guardian angels or the Virgin Mary, I'm here, I have these problems. Can you help me? Please. So we use our free will to direct our energy, our focus. So whenever we pray this way, we will always be helped. Those kinds of things, strength, courage, guidance, calmness, we always receive. The Spirit says we always receive those things when we stop and when we pray. Comparisons. So another source of unhappiness. So we think sometimes the grass is always greener. The grass is always greener on the other side. We are here, and then we're looking to the other side. So, but here's the question: is it greener? It looks greener. Apparently, it's greener. So it's not fair to compare ourselves to other people. We will get really, really, really frustrated and unhappy, and sometimes maybe we'll feel that we are inferior because we're always comparing something we want to have. So let's say I want to be thin. So I look at someone and think, why is she thin? I'm not. Or I want to be rich. So I look at someone that is rich. I want to be rich. We compare ourselves. That's so not fair with us and with the other person. So we should always compare our present self with our past self. And so how I was with who I am right now. So have I improved? Now, so we should ask those questions. Have I grown up emotionally, spiritually? Have I conquered more virtues in this life? Am I a better person now? Or even though I know I'm not perfect, but am I making the effort? Am I in the correct path? So we all have different backgrounds, different spiritual baggage. And sometimes we envy other people, like celebrities, actors, famous people, but we have no idea what they're going through. Let's think of some examples, really easy. Let's say Michael Jackson. He was really famous, a famous singer, everybody liked him, and he had a lot of problems. Robin Williams, the actor, he was always so happy in all the movies. We all loved his movies. And the way he ended up. Amy Winehouse, who doesn't know the singer, also I saw a documentary on her life. Her father was her manager, and she was supposed to go to rehab, and he never kind of forced her, no, you should take care of yourself, go into rehab. No, he said, no, you have to go, and we have shows, we have, a calendar. So the thing, she loved him, and he was more like a manager than a father to her. So we never know through all the things people go through, even though they are famous and rich, it doesn't matter really. Or Kurt Cobain, who knows Nirvana, right? So these people, they were all famous, rich, and we thought they had this wonderful life, but they didn't. They didn't have. If we just look for the material things, then we're so wrong sometimes. So who is our greatest example that we should follow or we should try to be like? An example of simplicity, an example of how our life should be. So let's see. So in this talk about the crisis, financial crisis, this guy compares how Jesus was and how we are. So Jesus traveled on foot, and he wanted to preach to people. He wanted to spread the message of love. So he would endure long hot days, walking, very cold nights on the desert. And then we have a lot of comfort, and we end up getting lazy and not doing much. So Jesus had no food, no car, no possessions, and we have all these, and we complain that what we have, we always want more. While we know there are people dying of hunger. Jesus was calm, humble, peaceful. We live on the edge. We're stressed out. And then we end up developing ulcers and other diseases. So if you want to compare yourself with someone, with our greatest example, this should be the person, or the evolved spirit we should compare ourselves to. We want to get there someday. And another example, also Francis of Assisi. He said that when he was Francis of Assisi, in that incarnation was the incarnation he evolved the most. And he was one of the most productive incarnations, and he used to fast, to not eat for a long time, to meditate a lot, to think about how the day was. So every night he would stop, and before going to bed he would think about the day and what have I done that was good or that wasn't, how I can do better the next day. And also he was very disciplined. So it's also a good example that if you want to follow. So now let's take a different perspective on materialism as an opposing movement to spiritualism. And this is another talk by, in the end I have the name, it's Novaes, his last name, Adenauer Novaes, that he talks about how those things are related. And then he goes through, if you guys like history, this is a really nice talk. He goes to the history of faith, or the history of religion, and history of reason, or of science. And here's really a short version of that talk, but he goes through faith, how it started. So we always had this thing inside us that believed maybe there's something else, that is something greater than us. But a long time ago, before Christ, we believed in many gods because we didn't know how to explain the nature. So everything was a god. The sun was a god, thunder, the rain. And then after that came the shamans, the witches. So people maybe who were more sensitive, and they understood a little bit better about this greater power. They didn't know maybe how to explain very well, but they became